The sky above the small town of Millfield turned an eerie shade of green as something massive descended from the heavens. It was quiet. Too quiet, except for the faint hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. People stopped what they were doing and looked up, their faces filled with confusion and fear. The object in the sky wasn't a plane or a satellite. It was a ship, enormous and sleek, its surface gleaming like polished silver. Nobody had ever seen anything like it before. Jake, Dawson stood on the edge of town gripping his rifle tightly. He had been outside checking the perimeter fence when the ship appeared. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched it hover silently above the fields. Jake wasn't a soldier anymore. He'd left the military years ago, but he still carried himself like one. His wife, Clara, had begged him to come inside when the evacuation orders started coming in over the radio. But Jake refused. There was no way he was leaving their home unprotected. Clara was already at the shelter, along with most of the other townsfolk. She had packed a bag with essentials and kissed him goodbye, her eyes wet with tears. "Promise me you'll be careful," she had said. Jake nodded, promising her he would join her soon. But deep down he knew he couldn't leave just yet. This was his land, his home. If whatever was in that ship decided to attack, he wanted to be ready. The alien ship didn't move, for hours. It just hung there, casting long shadows across the ground as the sun dipped lower in the sky. At first, people thought it might be some kind of advanced human technology, maybe a secret government project gone wrong. But then, the drones came out. They weren't like anything anyone had ever seen. Tall, mechanical, and eerily silent, the drones floated effortlessly above the ground. They moved with purpose, scanning the area with glowing red sensors. When they reached the outskirts of town, they began harvesting resources, ripping up crops, tearing apart buildings, and sucking up water from nearby streams. It was clear they weren't here to negotiate or make friends. A group of brave locals tried to fight back. Armed with hunting rifles and makeshift weapons, they fired at the drones, hoping to drive them away. But the drones responded instantly, unleashing beams of energy that cut through the resistance like paper. Within minutes, the attackers were either dead or retreating. The message was clear. These machines were not to be trifled with. Jake watched the chaos unfold from a safe distance. Crouched behind a pile of rubble near the edge of town, he clenched his jaw, anger boiling inside him. These aliens, these invaders, had no right to come here and destroy everything. But even as he thought about charging in with his rifle, he knew it wouldn't do any good. Against such overwhelming brute force was useless. As the day wore on, Jake noticed something strange. Whenever someone shouted or screamed loudly, the drones paused. It was subtle at first, a slight hesitation in their movements, but after paying closer attention, Jake realized it happened every time. The loud noises seemed to confuse them, if only for a moment. He filed this observation away, unsure what it meant but certain it mattered. By nightfall, the town was almost completely deserted. The few remaining survivors huddled together in basements and abandoned buildings, trying to stay hidden. Jake stayed where he was, keeping watch from his position near the edge of town. He didn't want to risk moving now, not with those drones patrolling the streets. Instead, he sat quietly, listening to the distant hum of the alien ship overhead. Sometime later, a young woman stumbled into view. She looked barely 20, her face pale and streaked with dirt. Her name was Emily, and Jake recognized her as one of the volunteers who had helped organize supplies at the shelter. She must have gotten separated from the others during the attack. "Emily," Jake whispered urgently, waving her over. She froze for a moment, then ran toward him, her footsteps light against the gravel. "What are you doing out here?" he asked once she was close enough. "I got lost," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I could find my way back to the shelter, but I don't know where I am anymore." Jake sighed. "You can't go wandering around like this. Those drones will spot you in seconds." He glanced around cautiously before continuing. "Stay low and follow me. We'll figure something out." Together they crept through the shadows, avoiding the bright beams of light cast by the drones. Every so often Jake would pause to listen, making sure they weren't being followed. As they moved, he told Emily about what he'd observed earlier, the way the drones reacted to loud noises. That's weird, Emily said, frowning. Why would they stop like that? I don't know, Jake replied. But it's the only thing we've got right now. Maybe we can use it somehow. They eventually reached the old schoolhouse on the far side of town. It was dark and empty, its windows shattered and walls cracked. Still, it provided some cover, and Jake figured it was as safe a place as any to regroup. Inside, they found a few other survivors who had taken refuge there, a middle-aged man named Robert, a teenage boy named Chris, and an elderly woman named Mary. None of them had much hope left, but Jake did his best to reassure them. We can't fight them head-on, he explained. But we've got to try something. If we can figure out why those drones react to sound, maybe we can use it against them. Robert shook his head. Sound? You really think that's going to work? It's all we've got, Jake said firmly. We're outgunned, outnumbered, and running out of options. We've got to take a chance. For the rest of the night, they brainstormed ideas. Emily suggested using car alarms to create loud noises, while Chris proposed setting off fireworks. Jake listened carefully, considering each suggestion. None of them felt quite right, but they were steps in the right direction. By the time dawn broke, they had a rough plan in place. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the broken windows, Jake stood up and addressed the group. We're not giving up, he said. Not today. Whatever happens, we stick together. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll find a way to turn this around. No one cheered or clapped. They simply nodded, their faces grim but determined. Outside, the alien ship still loomed overhead, its presence a constant reminder of how dire their situation was. But for the first time since the invasion began, Jake felt a flicker of hope. They might not have weapons or reinforcements, but they had something else, ingenuity, and sometimes that was enough. The next morning, the group at the schoolhouse was joined by Captain Laura Bennett. She was a tall woman with sharp features and an air of authority that made people listen when she spoke. Laura had once been a Marine, serving in conflicts far from Millfield, but she had retired years ago to live a quiet life in the countryside. That quiet life was now a distant memory. Laura entered the schoolhouse carrying a backpack filled with supplies she had salvaged from her home. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the weary faces of the survivors. We need a plan, she said without preamble. Staying holed up here isn't going to save us. Jake stepped forward. We've got an idea, he said. He explained what he had noticed about the drones pausing when they heard loud noises. Laura listened intently, her expression thoughtful. When Jake finished, she nodded slowly. That's interesting, she said. If sound affects them, maybe we can use it to our advantage. Henry Miller, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. It's not just about noise, he said. Henry was a musician, known around town for playing guitar at local events. His hands were calloused from years of strumming strings, and his voice carried a warmth that drew people in. Sound is more than just volume. It's rhythm, emotion, connection. Maybe these aliens don't understand that. Laura raised an eyebrow. You're saying we should try music? It's worth a shot, Henry replied. If loud noises confuse them, maybe something more complex, like a song, could do even more. The idea seemed far-fetched, but no one had a better suggestion. Laura agreed to give it a try. We'll need instruments, she said. Anything that makes noise. The group split up to search the schoolhouse and nearby buildings for anything useful. They found a few items: an old harmonica, a set of pots and pans, and even a battered acoustic guitar that Henry recognized as belonging to the school's music teacher. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As the day wore on, the group practiced their makeshift performance. Henry led the way, teaching the others simple rhythms and melodies. Jake wasn't musical, but he learned to clap in time with the beat. Emily discovered she could whistle a tune, while Chris banged on the pots and pans with surprising enthusiasm. Even Mary, the elderly woman, joined in by humming softly. Laura watched them practice, her arms crossed over her chest. She wasn't sure if this crazy plan would work, but she admired their determination. These people weren't soldiers or scientists. They were ordinary folks trying to survive in an extraordinary situation. If nothing else, their effort gave them hope. And hope was something they desperately needed. By nightfall, they were ready. The plan was risky. They would approach a cluster of drones near the edge of town and perform their impromptu concert. If the drones reacted the way they hoped, they might buy themselves some time or even gain an advantage. If not, well, none of them wanted to think about that. The group moved cautiously under the cover of darkness, sticking to the shadows to avoid detection. Jake carried the guitar slung over his shoulder, while Henry held the harmonica close to his lips. Laura took point, her rifle at the ready in case things went wrong. Behind them, Emily, Chris, Robert, and Mary followed, each clutching their instruments. When they reached the field where the drones were stationed, they stopped and crouched. Behind a low wall, the machines loomed ahead, their glowing red sensors scanning the area methodically. Jake's heart raced as he watched them. This was it, the moment of truth. "Remember," Laura whispered, "stay calm. Let Henry start, then join in when you're ready." Henry nodded. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out into the open and began to play. The soft notes of the harmonica drifted through the air, mournful, yet hopeful. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one of the drones turned. Toward him, its movements slow and deliberate. Encouraged, Henry kept playing. Slowly, the others joined in. Jake strummed the guitar, his fingers awkward but determined. Emily whistled a high-pitched melody, while Chris banged on the pots and pans with increasing confidence. Mary's humming added a gentle undertone, tying everything together. The effect was immediate. The drones froze, their mechanical limbs twitching erratically. They didn't attack or retreat. They simply stood there, seemingly paralyzed by the unexpected sounds. The group played louder, their voices and instruments blending into a chaotic symphony. For several minutes, the performance continued. The drones remained motionless, their red sensors dimming slightly. It was working. Their strange plan was actually working. A wave of relief washed over the group, and they exchanged triumphant glances. But then, something unexpected happened. From the shadows emerged new figures, taller, sleeker, and unmistakably alien. These weren't drones, these were the Vorth themselves. Their bodies were covered in shimmering armor, and their elongated heads tilted curiously as they observed. The humans. Laura raised her rifle instinctively, but Jake put a hand on her arm. "Wait," he said. "They haven't attacked yet." The Vorth didn't move closer. Instead, they stood silently, their large eyes studying the group with what looked like fascination. It was clear they were intelligent beings, far beyond the mindless drones that had wreaked havoc on the town. Henry hesitated, unsure whether to keep playing, but Laura urged him to continue. "Don't stop," she said. "Whatever you do, don't stop." So Henry played on, his harmonica filling the air with haunting notes. The rest of the group followed suit, their makeshift orchestra creating a sound unlike anything the Vorth had likely ever encountered. The aliens tilted their heads as if trying to process what they were hearing. After what felt like an eternity, the Vorth responded. A low-frequency vibration emanated from their bodies, resonating in the chests of everyone present. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost melodic, like they were attempting to communicate. "They're responding," Henry whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. "They're mimicking us." Sure enough, the vibrations grew more complex, echoing the rhythms and tones of the human performance. It was as if the Vorth were learning, adapting to this strange new form of interaction. Laura lowered her rifle, realizing that violence wasn't necessary, not yet anyway. She gestured for the group to keep playing, and they obliged, their confidence growing with each passing second. The barrier between species, once insurmountable, seemed to be crumbling before their eyes. Eventually, the Vorth withdrew, retreating back into the shadows without a word, or rather, without a sound. The group stayed where they were, too stunned to move. Had they just communicated with aliens? And if so, what did it mean? As the adrenaline began to wear off, exhaustion set in. Laura turned to the others. "Let's get back to the schoolhouse," she said. "We need to regroup and figure out what just happened." No one argued. They gathered their instruments and made their way back, their minds racing with questions. What had started as a desperate gamble had turned into something extraordinary, a fleeting moment of connection between two vastly different worlds. Back at the schoolhouse, the group sat in silence, replaying the events in their minds. Laura finally broke the quiet. "Whatever happens next," she said, "we need to stay focused. We've got their attention now, and that's both a blessing and a curse." Jake nodded. "They're not just invaders," he said. "They're curious. Maybe we can use that." Henry smiled faintly. "Music brought us this far," he said. "Maybe it can take us further." As dawn broke over Millfield, the survivors allowed themselves a small measure of hope. They didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. They had found a way to reach the Vorth, however briefly. And in a world turned upside down by alien invasion, that was no small victory. The days that followed were tense but hopeful. The encounter with the Vorth had left everyone shaken but also curious. Laura spent hours poring over maps of the town, trying to predict where the aliens might appear next. Jake, meanwhile, kept watch outside the schoolhouse, his rifle slung over his shoulder and his mind replaying the strange vibrations the Vorth had emitted during their meeting. Henry stayed busy tuning the battered guitar and practicing new melodies, convinced that music was the key to understanding their mysterious visitors. Emily and Chris helped gather supplies from nearby homes, scavenging whatever they could find: food, water, tools, and even more instruments. They brought back a cracked tambourine and an old flute, adding variety to their growing collection. Robert and Mary focused on keeping morale high, sharing stories and jokes around the flickering light of a small fire in the corner of the schoolhouse. Despite the danger, there was a sense of purpose in the air. For the first time since the invasion began, the group felt like they were doing something meaningful. But not everyone was optimistic. Some survivors whispered about running away, heading for larger cities where they might find safety in numbers. Others argued that staying put was suicide, especially if the Vorth returned with reinforcements. Laura listened patiently to their concerns but remained firm. "We've made contact," she said. "If we leave now, we lose any chance of figuring out why they're here and how to stop them." Her words seemed to calm the group, though fear still lingered beneath the surface. Jake noticed it in the way people flinched at every distant hum or shadow that moved across the walls. He understood their anxiety, he felt it too, but he also believed in what they were doing. If music could confuse the drones and intrigue the Vorth, then maybe it could do more. Maybe it could be the bridge they needed to survive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Vorth returned. This time, they didn't send drones, or hover silently above the town. Instead, they walked into the open field near the schoolhouse, their towering forms illuminated by the fading light. There were 3 of them, each standing nearly 10 feet tall, their sleek armor shimmering faintly in the dusk. Their elongated heads tilted slightly, as if studying the humans who watched them from behind the schoolhouse windows. Laura signaled for everyone to stay calm. "Don't make any sudden moves," she whispered. "Let's see what they want." Henry stepped forward, clutching his harmonica tightly. Without waiting for permission, he began to play. The soft notes drifted through the cool evening air, tentative at first but growing stronger as he gained confidence. The Vorth froze, their glowing eyes fixed on him. After a moment, they responded, not with aggressive vibrations this time, but with sounds of their own. Low melodic tones emanated from their bodies, echoing Henry's melody almost perfectly. "It's like they're learning," Emily murmured, her voice filled with awe. "They are," Jake replied. "They're copying us." Encouraged by the Vorth's reaction, Henry played louder, weaving a simple tune that the others quickly joined. Jake strummed the guitar, while Emily whistled along. Chris banged on the pots and pans, creating a rhythmic beat that anchored the performance. Even Laura joined in, clapping softly to keep time. The sound grew richer and more complex, filling the space between the humans and the aliens. For several minutes, The two groups communicated through music. The Vorth added their own layers to the performance, their deep tones blending seamlessly with the human melodies. It was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced, a symphony born of desperation and curiosity, bridging the gap between species. When the music finally faded, the Vorth stood still, their expressions unreadable behind their reflective visors. Then one of them raised a hand pointing toward the sky. A holographic image appeared above them, a swirling pattern of colors and shapes that shifted and changed like a living painting. The humans watched in silence, unsure what to make of it. I think they're trying to show us something, Henry said. Maybe they're home? Or why they're here, Laura added. She stepped closer, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. Can you understand us? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot of nerves in her stomach. The Vorth tilted, their heads again, then emitted another series of low-frequency vibrations. This time the sounds carried a different quality, softer, almost questioning. It was as if they were asking for help. Jake frowned. Do you think they're lost? Or stranded? It's possible, Laura said. If they're looking for resources, maybe they don't have another choice. The idea unsettled the group. These beings weren't just invaders. They were intelligent creatures with needs and limitations. Maybe they weren't so different from humans after all. As the night wore on, the Vorth continued to share their holographic images, each one more intricate than the last. Some depicted vast landscapes dotted with strange structures, while others showed constellations unfamiliar to Earth's skies. Gradually, the humans pieced together fragments of the Vorth's story. They came from a dying planet, searching for a new home. Their drones harvested resources not out of malice but necessity. By the time the Vorth departed, the humans were left with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear: they had found a way to communicate, however imperfectly. Music had opened a door, and now it was up to them to decide what to do next. Back inside the schoolhouse, the group huddled together to discuss what they had learned. Laura summarized their observations, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the fragile connection they had forged. We can't fight them, she said, but maybe we can negotiate. Find a way to coexist. Jake nodded. If we focus on music, we might be able to teach them more about us and learn more about them. Henry smiled faintly. It's working already. They responded to our songs. That has to mean something. The others agreed, though doubts lingered. Could they really trust the Vorth? And even if they could, how long would it take to build a real understanding between their species? The challenges ahead were enormous, but the alternative, violence and destruction, was unthinkable. Over the next few days, the group worked tirelessly to prepare for another encounter. Henry composed new pieces, blending earthly melodies with rhythms inspired by the Vorth's vibrations. Jake and Laura scouted the area, marking locations where the aliens had been seen. Emily and Chris gathered materials to repair the damaged instruments, while Robert and Mary cooked meals and kept spirits high. Their efforts paid off when the Vorth returned once more. This time, the meeting was less cautious and more collaborative. The humans performed a piece specifically written for the occasion, its melody hopeful and inviting. The Vorth responded with equal enthusiasm, their tones weaving seamlessly into the composition. By the end of the performance, both groups seemed reluctant to part ways. As the weeks passed, these interactions became routine. The Vorth began sharing more of their culture through soundscapes and holograms, while the humans introduced them to Earth's music and traditions. Slowly but surely, a bond formed, a fragile yet profound connection built on mutual curiosity and respect. Not everyone in Millfield embraced this newfound relationship. Some survivors refused to trust the Vorth, accusing the group of being naive. Tensions flared occasionally, but Laura and Jake worked hard to maintain peace. We don't have to like them, Laura told the skeptics. We just have to give them a chance. And so, life in Millfield took on a surreal rhythm. Humans and Vorth worked side by side, exchanging knowledge and experiences. Drones no longer roamed the streets unchecked. Instead, they assisted with rebuilding efforts, guided by instructions relayed through music. The once hostile battlefield transformed into a place of collaboration and discovery. Through it all, Henry's compositions served as the foundation of their communication. His songs became a universal language, transcending barriers of species and culture. Each note carried a message of hope, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, connection was possible. As Jake stood outside one evening, watching the Vorth's ship glow softly in the distance, he felt a sense of quiet pride. They hadn't defeated the invaders, nor had they driven them away. But they had found common ground, proving that sometimes the simplest things, like a song, could change the course of history. The bond between the humans and the Vorth grew stronger with each passing day. The once hostile presence of the alien ship now felt less like a threat and more like a strange but constant companion hovering over Millfield. The Vorth continued to visit regularly, their towering forms moving with surprising grace as they interacted with the townsfolk. Music remained the cornerstone of their communication, but it wasn't just about songs anymore. It was about sharing stories, emotions, and ideas. Henry spent hours composing new pieces that blended human melodies with the unique tones and rhythms the Vorth had introduced. His music became a kind of bridge, allowing both species to express things words could never capture. One evening he performed a hauntingly beautiful tune inspired by the holographic images the Vorth had shown them. The aliens responded immediately, their low-frequency vibrations echoing his melody before adding layers of their own. It was as if they were completing his thoughts, turning a solo performance into a duet. Jake watched these exchanges with a mixture of awe and pride. He had always thought of himself as a practical man, someone who relied on strength and strategy rather than creativity or emotion. But seeing how music brought people together, even across such vast differences, made him reconsider what truly mattered in life. "It's not just noise," he said to Laura one night after another successful meeting with the Vorth. "It's connection." Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And we need that now more than ever. If we can keep building this trust, maybe we can find a way to share this planet without destroying it, or each other." Despite the progress, challenges remained. Some survivors still distrusted the Vorth, convinced that their intentions couldn't be fully understood. A small group led by a man named Paul refused to participate in the musical exchanges, arguing that the aliens were simply biding their time until they could launch a full-scale invasion. "They're playing us," Paul insisted during one heated argument at the schoolhouse. "Mark my words, they'll turn on us the moment they get what they want." Laura tried to reason with him, pointing out the changes they had already seen. The drones no longer destroyed crops or buildings. Instead, they helped repair damaged infrastructure. The Vorth shared advanced techniques for purifying water and growing food in harsh conditions, knowledge that could benefit humanity for generations. "Does that sound like an invasion to you?" she asked. "Or does it sound like cooperation?" Paul didn't back down, but most of the others sided with Laura. Over time, even the skeptics began to soften as they witnessed the tangible benefits of working with the Vorth. Slowly, the divide between the two groups narrowed, though it never disappeared entirely. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. As Henry and Jake prepared for another performance near the edge of town, a young Vorth approached them alone. Unlike the others, this one was shorter and less armored, its movements hesitant and cautious. It carried a small device in its long, slender hands, which it held out toward Henry. "What is that?" Jake asked, gripping his rifle instinctively. Henry raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I don't know," he said softly, "but I think it wants us to take it." The Vorth tilted its head, emitting a series of gentle tones. Taking a deep breath, Henry stepped forward and accepted the device. It was smooth and cool to the touch, shaped like a flat disc with intricate patterns etched into its surface. When he pressed one of the symbols, a soft hum filled the air, followed by a series of lights that pulsed in rhythm with the sound. "It's some kind of instrument," Henry realized, his voice tinged with excitement. "They've made it for us." Jake lowered his rifle, his suspicion giving way to curiosity. Why would they do that? Maybe because they trust us, Laura suggested, joining them. She knelt beside Henry, examining the device carefully. This is a big step. They're not just learning from us, they're inviting us to learn from them. Over the next few days, the humans experimented with the alien instrument, discovering that it could produce a wide range of sounds, from deep, resonant tones to high-pitched whistles. Henry quickly incorporated it into his compositions, blending its unique qualities with the familiar notes of earthly music. The result was unlike anything anyone had ever heard, a fusion of two worlds, united in harmony. The Vorth seemed pleased with the humans' efforts, responding with increasingly complex performances of their own. Their interactions became less formal and more playful, as if they were enjoying themselves as much as the humans were. During one memorable session, Chris accidentally dropped one of the pots he had been using as a drum. The loud clang startled everyone, including the Vorth, who emitted a series of rapid staccato tones that sounded suspiciously like laughter. They have a sense of humor, Emily exclaimed, giggling despite herself. Who would have thought? Even Mary, who rarely left the schoolhouse, joined in the fun. She sat quietly in the background, humming old folk songs while the others played. Her voice may have been frail, but it added a warmth to the performances that touched everyone who heard it. As the weeks turned into months, Millfield began to feel almost normal again. The Vorth helped rebuild homes and restore electricity, their advanced technology making quick work of tasks that would have taken humans years to complete. In return, the humans taught the aliens about Earth's culture, its history, art, and traditions. Simple gestures like sharing meals or telling stories around a campfire created bonds that transcended language barriers. But not everything was perfect. The Vorth still needed resources to survive, and tensions occasionally flared when their needs conflicted with those of the humans. For example, the aliens required large amounts of water to power their ship, which sometimes left the town's wells running dry. Laura worked tirelessly to mediate these disputes, reminding both sides of the importance of compromise and mutual respect. "We're all just trying to make it through this," she told Jake one evening as they stood outside the schoolhouse watching the Vorth ship glow softly against the night sky. "They're not perfect, and neither are we. But if we can keep talking, if we can keep listening, we might actually pull this off." Jake nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Do you think they'll stay here forever? Or will they leave once they've got what they need?" "I don't. No," Laura admitted. "But I hope they'll remember us when they go, and I hope we'll remember them too." One day the Vorth gathered the humans for a special performance. They chose a field on the outskirts of town where wildflowers bloomed in vibrant colors under the midday sun. Dozens of Vorth arrived, their armor gleaming in the light. They formed a loose circle around the humans, their glowing eyes focused intently on Henry and the others. When the music began, it was unlike anything they had done before. The Vorth started with a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath their feet. Then, layer upon layer of sound built on top of it, creating a rich tapestry of harmonies that enveloped the entire field. The humans joined in, their voices and instruments blending seamlessly with the alien melodies. As the performance reached its climax, the Vorth activated a holographic display above them. This time, the images weren't just of their home planet, they showed scenes of Earth as well. There were forests, oceans, cities, and deserts, all rendered in stunning detail. At the center of the display was a single word, written in both alien script and English: harmony. The message was clear. Despite their differences, humans and Vorth were capable of living together, not just surviving, but thriving. The performance ended with a final powerful chord that lingered in the air long after the last note faded. For a moment, there was silence. Then, applause erupted from the human side, followed by cheers and whistles. The Vorth responded with their own version of celebration, their bodies swaying slightly as they emitted joyful tones. As the sun set over Millfield, casting a golden glow across the landscape, Jake felt a profound sense of gratitude. Against all odds, they had found a way to connect, not through force or fear, but through understanding and creativity. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but for the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that they might actually make it. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, he realized something else. The universe was vast and mysterious, full of wonders beyond comprehension. But perhaps, just perhaps, music was the thread that bound it all together. Months had passed since the first time the humans and the Vorth came together through music. Millfield, once a quiet farming town, had transformed into something extraordinary, a place where two vastly different species worked side by side, learning from each other and finding ways to coexist. The scars of the invasion were still visible in the broken buildings and empty fields. But the spirit of the town had changed. Hope had replaced fear, and cooperation had replaced conflict. Jake Dawson stood on the edge of town one morning, watching, as a group of Vorth helped repair the old water tower. Their movements were precise and efficient, their advanced tools making quick work of what would have taken humans weeks to accomplish. Nearby, Henry Miller sat on a crate, strumming his oar guitar and humming softly. A young Vorth leaned over his shoulder, its glowing eyes fixed on the strings with obvious fascination. "It's funny," Jake said to Laura, who stood beside him. "I never thought I'd see the day when aliens were helping us fix stuff." Laura smiled, her sharp features softening. "Funny how things turn out, isn't it? We went from fighting them to working with them." "I guess music really does bring people together," Jake replied. "Even if they're not exactly people." Laura chuckled. "You're starting to sound like Henry." Jake shrugged. "Maybe he's rubbing off on me. Or maybe I'm just getting used to the idea that we're not alone in the universe anymore." The two fell silent for a moment, watching as the Vorth finished their task and began packing up their equipment. Overhead, the massive alien ship loomed silently, its presence no longer a source of dread but a reminder of how far they had come. It was hard to believe that just a few months ago, everyone in Millfield had been preparing for the worst. As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between humans and Vorth deepened. They shared more than just resources and technology. They shared experiences. One evening, the Vorth invited the humans aboard their ship for the first time. Laura led the group, her heart racing as they stepped inside the sleek metallic structure. The interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. Smooth walls that glowed faintly, corridors filled with strange symbols, and a hum that seemed to resonate in their bones. The Vorth guided them to a large chamber at the center of the ship. There they projected holograms of their home planet, a desolate world ravaged by drought and storms. The images were heartbreaking, showing cities reduced to ruins and landscapes barren of life. But there were also glimpses of beauty. Towering, crystalline structures, vibrant sunsets, and vast oceans that sparkled like jewels. "They're showing us why they came here," Laura whispered to Jake. "Not to conquer, but to survive." The Vorth then turned the hologram toward Earth, highlighting its lush forests, sprawling oceans, and diverse wildlife. They added a single word in both their language and English: balance. "They want us to share this planet," Henry said, his voice filled with wonder. "They're asking us to find a way to live together without destroying what makes Earth special." The message was clear, and it weighed heavily on everyone. Sharing resources and knowledge was one thing, but sharing an entire planet? That was a challenge unlike any they had faced before. Back on the ground, the humans gathered in the schoolhouse to discuss the implications. Laura took charge, pacing back and forth as she spoke. "We can't ignore their request," she said. "But we also can't give them everything they need without considering the impact on our own survival." Jake nodded. "It's about compromise. We've got to figure out how much we can offer without hurting ourselves, or the planet." Henry raised his hand hesitantly. "What if we focus on teaching them sustainable practices? Things like crop rotation, renewable energy, and conservation." "That's a start," Laura agreed. "But it's going to take more than that. We'll need global cooperation, not just Millfield working with the Vorth, but the whole world. The conversation stretched late into the night with everyone contributing ideas. By the end, they had a rough plan. They would reach out to nearby towns and cities, spreading the word about what had happened in Millfield and encouraging others to join the effort. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way forward. Over the next several weeks, delegations from Millfield traveled to neighboring communities, sharing their story and demonstrating the power of music as a tool for communication. At first, many were skeptical, dismissing the idea as naive or unrealistic. But when they saw footage of the Vorth responding to human melodies, their attitudes began to shift. Slowly, more and more people came to understand that this wasn't just about surviving an alien invasion. It was about building a future where both species could thrive. In Millfield itself, life continued to evolve. The Vorth introduced new technologies that improved agriculture, medicine, and infrastructure, while the humans taught them about Earth's ecosystems and cultural traditions. Together, they developed innovative solutions to shared challenges, such as purifying water using a combination of alien engineering and natural filtration methods. Music remained at the heart of their interactions. Every evening, the humans and Vorth gathered in the field outside town for impromptu performances. These sessions became a celebration of their growing bond, with each side bringing something unique to the mix. The Vorth's deep, resonant tones blended seamlessly with the humans' lively rhythms, creating a symphony that felt both ancient and new. One night, as the stars twinkled above, Henry composed a piece specifically for the occasion. He called it Harmony, a tribute to everything they had achieved together. When he began to play, the Vorth responded immediately, their voices rising in unison with his melody. The performance grew louder and more complex, drawing in everyone within earshot. Even Paul, the former skeptic, joined in, clapping along with the beat. By the time the final note faded into the night, tears streamed down faces both human and alien. No words were needed to express what they all felt in that moment, a profound sense of unity and hope. As the seasons changed, so did the landscape of Millfield. The fields once stripped bare by the drones were now lush with crops grown, using a blend of human and alien techniques. Solar panels powered homes and businesses, their efficiency boosted by Vorth technology. Children played alongside young Vorth, their laughter mingling in the air as they learned from each other. Jake often found himself reflecting on how much had changed. He thought about Clara, who had returned to town after hearing about the truce, and how proud she was of what they had accomplished. He thought about Laura, whose leadership had brought them through the darkest days. And he thought about Henry, whose belief in the power of music had opened doors no one thought possible. One evening, as he sat on the porch of his rebuilt home, Jake looked up at the sky. The Vorth ship still hovered above the town, a constant reminder of the journey they had taken together. But instead of feeling threatened, he felt grateful for the lessons learned, the friendships forged, and the realization that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, humanity could rise to the occasion. Laura joined him, sitting quietly for a moment before speaking. "Do you think we'll ever fully understand them?" she asked. "Probably not," Jake admitted. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe understanding isn't the point. Maybe it's enough to just connect." Laura smiled. "That's a good way to put it." As they sat there, the distant hum of music drifted through the air, a reminder that no matter how different they were, humans and Vorth had found a way to create something beautiful together. In a world full of uncertainty, that was a victory worth celebrating. And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, Millfield became a symbol of what was possible when fear gave way to curiosity, and division gave way to harmony. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was proof that even in the most unlikely circumstances, connection could prevail.